to understand that there is a possibility for you to make money. No matter what is said, the idea of the starving musician is no longer a thing in my opinion, and I've seen it for many people. There's real money to be made. You just have to know what you're doing. And if you're in this webinar, you're here because you obviously are taking the first great step. Today's really cool. If you were here last week, this is really an extension of the business model canvas or business plan, right? So business model canvas is just an overview of writing a business plan. And now we're going to dive into our actual business. And as I think we posted in our socials, if you're an artist and you're releasing music in any capacity, you're already a record label. The same way if you're an artist and you make money, you're a business. So when we put this out there, we felt like people may not sign up because they might think, oh man, this isn't for me. I don't have a record label. But if you have a TuneCore, if you've got the BMI, or if you want those things, you are more than likely going to be operating as a record label. And it's important that you see how it operates. And with the tools and stuff that exist today, it's possible to delegate and outsource a lot of the work, so that you can be a full-fledged label, even if it's just you by yourself. But of course, before we get started, I'm gonna tap in with my team and see what they've got to say and check in with them first. Mickey, V, Casey, how y'all doing today? You guys got anything?
Doing well. Excited to learn how to start a label. And yeah, guys, if you didn't know, I'm gonna be on tomorrow talking about productivity tools, how to keep yourself organized, and make sure things don't fall through the cracks, and make sure you have access to the tools that exist for creators and entrepreneurs today to supercharge their productivity. So that one's tomorrow night, 7 Eastern time.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick run through what we got going on this week. So like Mickey just said, we got Mickey coming up tomorrow with the Creator OS template with Notion. So make sure y'all tap in for that. And then on Thursday, we have a new podcast with Dior Ashley Brown, right, Yudin? She's from DC, so she's a DC creative. It's a dope podcast, so that's coming out Thursday, and that's gonna be our week. So yeah, make sure y'all tune in.
Thank you. And if you don't know, if you guys are new, Casey is our head of content, Mickey's our head of community, and Davina is our head of communications. V, you got anything for us? Any words of wisdom as you were playing you were in a DJ role, DJ V? I've got a presentation. So this was a tough one for me to put together. I'm not going to lie, because it's a lot of information. So it's not a bunch of pictures. It's not as pretty as the other ones. And I'm going to go at the pace that you guys are comfortable with. So we're going to get through this thing. Starting an indie label. Again, I was saying before we got started, if you're putting music out in any capacity, you're already a label. And indie in our definition means you're basically not one of the big three. You're not Universal, Warner, or Sony, or a subsidiary. So you're operating outside of the major label system. So the purpose is to provide an overview starting a label in 2023. Things are changing quickly, so I wanted to put 2023 on here because I feel like from all the stuff that I'm learning in real time, especially with the tools and stuff that Mikey is sharing with us, I don't even know where to start. So it's like, this is where it is today. I think we'll probably do this every 6 months because there'll be better tools with AI and all the stuff that's happening. And we'll keep evolving as technology evolves. But this is where we are today, January 31st, 2023. If I was starting a record label, this is how I would approach it. So a quick overview or agenda for today. We're going to do an industry overview just to check in on like where the industry is for independence. We're going to get into business planning, which if you were a part of last week's webinar, you guys will have a good overview of that, but this dives a little deeper. We're going to talk about building your team. So again, if you're building anything, you're going to need a team, whether you're hiring people or whether you're outsourcing. We're going to talk about marketing and promotion. That's a big one for everybody in this room. Most of you who I've spoken with, that's pretty much the elephant in the room for most creatives. We're going to talk about distribution and sales, which is how record labels make money. And you make money selling music. And then we're going to open it up for the Q&A at the end. If you guys have questions, if you guys can type them in the Q&A section in the webinar while I'm speaking, then we'll address them in order. Once I'm done, we'll get to as many of them as possible. So as I'm speaking, if you have questions, just throw them in the Q&A so we can address them. And then when I'm checking in, I might be able to like just go in and maybe answer a couple of them. But I want to leave as much room for that Q&A, possibly bring some people up so they can share their experiences, ask questions. There are no dumb questions, so ask the questions, because assume if you don't know or if you're not sure, somebody else in the room is also not sure. All right, so an industry overview. We used to spend thousands of dollars in our old company every year to get these industry reports that basically would tell us what we knew was coming, that the independent market was growing, that the big three were losing their market share, and that this independent group of artists, publishers, venues were starting to bite into that revenue stream. I got started in the music business officially in 2008. That was my first full-time year in the business. That was when I took my leap of faith. And at that time, so you understand, Spotify didn't exist, Instagram didn't exist, Facebook didn't have business pages. MySpace was pretty much still like the thing for artists to share music. SoundCloud wasn't a thing yet. YouTube was barely a thing. So like uploading and sharing on YouTube wasn't practical. Like people didn't do that. And so the industry as we knew it was dying because all of the major labels were losing the revenue they used to make from selling CDs and selling on iTunes to people now downloading illegally on Kazaa and all of the LimeWire and everything that if you're old enough, you know about it. And then what we saw happening, as you know, I was an engineer at the time, full-time producer, was I saw that there was a large group of folks who were making their own music, were paying for studio time, were pressing up CDs, were playing local shows, were selling merchandise, working with local screen printers, and were generating money that the industry wasn't paying attention to. And I remember I had a couple job interviews and offers to go work at record labels around 2009-10. I would go to these meetings and I would always say, you know, there's like a large independent movement that's going to save the industry. And they'd laugh at me every time, or they'd say I didn't know what I was talking about and there's no way. And the industry couldn't exist outside of Sony, Warner, and Universal. And then as these tools would roll out, as you would see, okay, now this thing called Twitter came out and people were connecting quicker. Facebook was more global and people were sharing, you know, the idea of people like posting a song on Facebook from their SoundCloud now was a thing. Then Instagram came out. Then, you know, Bandcamp was around, but now Bandcamp was really starting to take off. And I started seeing all these tools really starting to be adopted. And the labels still didn't pay attention because at that time, the labels had over 90% of the market. And the industry was something like 20 something billion dollars in total, which isn't even the real number. I don't think that covers everything, but they had not over 90% of the market went to Sony, Warner, and Universal. Now in 2023, almost 40% of the market is going to the independent sector. So that shows you that they've lost, call it 30% of the market in the last 10 years. And based on what I'm seeing in our community and what I'm seeing in the world, that number is going to keep growing. You're going to see more and more independent creators making more and more money. And the need for a bigger label deal won't be as practical because you'll have 1 million people who figured out how to make $1 million independently. And then you'll have, you know, 20, 30 people signed to these big labels making millions of dollars, but the numbers won't add up. So that's really just an overview. And that's hopefully something that incentivizes you if you're on this webinar or if you're watching this, to understand that there is a possibility for you to make money. No matter what is said, the idea of the starving musician is no longer a thing in my opinion. And I've seen it for many people. There's real money to be made. You just have to know what you're doing. And if you're in this webinar, you're here because you obviously are taking the first great step. All right, we're going to get into business planning. So y'all know every week I say the same thing. I can't see y'all chats while I'm sharing my screen. So Davina's just going to yell at me from over there if she sees something worth stopping. But I'm going to run through business planning, again, assuming that you either took last week's course or you have an idea of what last week's course was. So again, last week we went over the business model canvas, which was a tool that I've used to write business plans over and over again. It's super helpful. If you haven't seen that course or that webinar, please go watch it in our 24/7 TV section of our community, because that tool is a super powerful tool to help you write your business plan. Now, with that said, every business has 5 elements, right? And I don't care if I'm selling toilet paper, if I'm cutting grass, if I'm selling CDs, if I'm selling studio time, if I'm writing for other people, if I'm setting up a licensing and sync company. There are 5 elements of every business: legal, finance, administrative, operation, and marketing. Those 5 cover all businesses. And I don't care if there's no business in the world that you can introduce me to that I can't point to and say that's what's legal, that's what's financial, that's what's administrative, that's what's operational, that's what's marketing. So when you're writing your business plan and when you're breaking out everything that we're going to discuss in this, you'll start seeing what's legal, what's finance, what's administrative, what's operational, what's marketing. And you can start putting L, F, A, O, or M next to it. And then you'll also see where things intersect, where like legal and finance might intersect, or operations and marketing might intersect, or administrative and marketing might intersect. The reason I share this is when we have our one-on-ones, or when we're helping you guys build any of your plans or execute on any of your visions, or if you've worked with me before, you know that I speak in this language. I just want to start with that so you understand that all businesses are simplified down to 5 elements. I don't care how complex the business. And as long as you can explain to me what those 5 elements are doing at each step of your business, you'll find a way to be successful. The people who have figured out how to be successful in business know their legal, finance, admin, ops, and marketing, or they've surrounded themselves with people who know those elements in their business. Step 1, setting goals and objectives. So if you're starting a label, if you're an artist and you say, I'm going to release music and I want to make a business out of this, you've got to set some goals for yourself before you release your first song. And if you've already released songs and you're like, all right, I've released songs, now what? This is a great exercise to go back and figure out. So if you've got your pen and your paper out, you can write this down. Obviously, this will be recorded and you guys will have access to this on demand in the community as well for free. But this is super important for you guys to understand. Like, if you don't have goals when you start, it's really hard for you to navigate what success looks like. And a lot of you, when you email me or you DM me and you say, hey, so I've got this, I've got that, what's next? If you've got a response to me, I always go to what's the goal, right? I can't answer your question until I know what the goal is, because that's going to help us navigate what to do next. So as you're setting goals, these are just some examples that I've listed. There are countless more, but these are some that I've used and I've seen other artists use and other brands use that are important. So one goal might be build a strong brand image. You can equate that to like social media presence, followers, fans, subscribers. That's a strong brand and image. Signing and developing artists, right? That's a goal. So if you're starting a label and you want to add on additional people, then it might be the quantity or the quality of the people that you are signing to your label. Releasing music, right? There are goals there. When you sign a record contract, one of the most important terms in your contract or your deal is how many songs are you going to give that label, right? So that lets you know, like, if you sign to Warner or Sony tomorrow or Universal, I don't care who you are, one of the terms in your deal is going to be you're going to deliver this many songs. So even for yourself as an artist, if you don't sign and you're working for yourself, you should also have that goal in mind. Revenue, right? We're talking business. So you've got to have a revenue goal. And a lot of people don't even know where to begin with this. There are a whole lot of ways you can approach this. You could say, I want to make what I make in my current job. You could throw a random number out there, like I want to make $1 million a year. You could look at what other people are doing and try to duplicate their success. But either way, you want to have a revenue goal and you want to have it within a time period. So usually you want to say, in my first year, I would like to make this much. And then you'll break down, this much from music streaming, this much from merchandise sales, this much from ticket sales, this much from licensing and sync. And then it's just growing. Your business then becomes growing those revenue streams. Building a fan base. So obviously, if you're an independent artist, we all know that this is a goal. How do I get more people to listen to my music? If you're a record label and you have other artists signed to you, this is one of the biggest parts of your business, is how do we build multiple fan bases for multiple artists? How do we make sure that our artists all are tapping into the people who we believe will be fans of their music? And we define fan by people that will pay you either with time or money, right? Attention or money. Building relationships with other industry professionals. This is super important. This is connecting with people within our industry and in adjacent industries. So you want to get to know the radio DJs and the head of radio promotion at your local radio station. You want to get to know the promoters who are booking the shows at your local venues. You want to get to know the head of digital marketing. You want to get to know the Spotify curators and playlist curators. So you want to start building relationship with industry professionals. That takes time, but the return on that is exponential, meaning the folks that I know at Tidal who I met 6 years ago, it's easier for me to get a record pitched on Tidal today than it was 6 years ago. And that's, relationships 101, but we don't think about that as we're building. And then you got to nurture those relationships. So again, if you meet somebody 6 years ago and they work at Tidal or they work at Spotify or they work at YouTube and you only reach out to them when you have a song coming out, it's not really a relationship, or it's not a strong relationship. But if you're keeping in touch with that person, supporting that person's initiatives, checking in on that person, there's a higher chance that person's going to support you when the time comes as well. And then concert showcases and festivals. So this can be quantity, right? We want to do this many shows. This could be type. We want to do this many festivals, local festivals or larger festivals. It could be a combination of, we want to hold showcases, right? Motown, one of the most successful labels, who kind of started independent and then got acquired, built their success by putting together showcases targeting young Black Americans who in a segregated time had a hard time going to shows safely. Motown was able to negotiate deals and take these acts on the road and rinse and repeat that over and over again. And they called it the Motown Review, where they would take 6, 7 artists, and you'd usually have one big artist who everybody would come out to see. And then the artists they were developing would be the opening acts. And then you'd basically find yourself moving up the line. So you may have gone to a Motown Review and seen the Jackson 5 when they weren't anybody. And then you might have gone to a Motown Review and seen the Jackson 5 and they were headlining. And that was their development process because they made their money from shows. So that's just an example of like, that was 60 something years ago. That same model works today. If you want to break an artist or if you want to break multiple artists, being able to put on a showcase and being able to travel that showcase is one of the best ways you can grow your audience. So these are just some examples of goals and objectives that a record label could have in business planning. There are many, many more. If you guys feel like there's any that I missed, please put them in the chat. And then, if you guys are taking notes, again, this will be available after, and I can always come back to a screen when we're in our Q&A. But if anybody has any more that they can think of, please put them in the chat and share with the community. All right. There's a lot of words on the screen. You do not have to write this down. We have this in a course, and these are tools in the class that Prasal is teaching tomorrow, the webinar that Prasal is teaching tomorrow, using Notion as a tool. Prasal is blowing my mind in how efficient this tool Notion is and how you can use it for everything from like managing your time, managing your budget, managing your team, managing your relationships. And so all of these I pulled from what Prasal is putting together in Notion. So you don't have to worry about grabbing this now because Prasal has made this free for all of our community members in Creator OS. But I just wanted to list out like, this is what a budget, these are some budget items for an artist or record label. And this is a little bit like there are many, many more and subs within this, but it's not cheap to be an artist. It's not cheap to run a record label. And so if you are an artist and you're like, man, I want to start a record label and I want to sign other artists, just know that this multiplies, right? So if these, call it 25, 30 items, average, let's say $3,000, $4,000 per person a month, and you sign 5 people, you're responsible for that $15,000 a month. And that's the reality of running a record label and also the reality of being an independent artist, right? Like we all know it's not cheap. We all know it's You got to pay money. You got to pay to make money. But this is an example of like, when someone says, I want to be an artist full time, in my mind, I see this and I'm like, I wonder if they know what that means, if they understand like studio time and equipment and maintaining that stuff costs, if like paying for engineering and paying producers, paying for mastering, if you're going to do vinyl or if you're going to do any kind of merchandise, paying for that artwork, if you're not super creative or you're not using a AI now, how you're paying for that. Music videos, God knows the cost of those, even at a lower scale. Even with a friend with an iPhone, you still got to pay artist promotion and marketing costs. Like that's one line item, but that within itself is this page. Like there's a list of marketing and promotion costs. Touring and travel costs. We're helping an artist put a tour together now. And I think I spoke about this in a couple webinars ago. Just the simple idea of like how much it costs us to ship the merchandise from one city to the other, from one venue to the other, is more than the price of the merch itself. But we have to have merch there. Legal fees. If you guys have checked in with Charter, we've been promoting it on our socials and in the community. Hopefully we continue to see companies like Charter. If somebody can put the Charter website in the chat, Charter is actually free right now. They've created a AI tool that creates producer agreements. Right now it's free for everybody to use. I think it ends tomorrow. So go check it out today. And if there's something you could do today, do it. But if not, we'll get a discount code for them as well. But legal fees can be expensive, right? For every song, if you got to pay, even if it's $500 for an agreement and you put out 100 songs, right? Like who has that kind of money? Office expenses, rent, utilities, office supplies. We're not even talking about insurance, right? When you go on tour, when you put a show together, you got to pay for insurance, whether you're paying people commission, whether you're paying people salary or on retainer. And that's just one side. So like the financial part of it, and when you do your business model canvas, this is the list that should end up in that expense or your cost of business box. The higher your revenue goal, if you're like, man, I want to make $1 million a year, the more you're going to pay for all of this. If you say, man, I want to make $1,000 a month, no, you're going to pay a portion of that to this. And so when you're creating your business plan for your record label, these are just some. And again, you guys can either screenshot this or it's available in our Creator OS tool that Prasal's put together for us. There's a lot more to this, but it's obviously not cheap, not inexpensive. And this is just like the top of the iceberg. Next, you want to set up your legal considerations or take your legal considerations into account. All right, so choosing a name for the label sounds simple, but here's a catch. You can't have the same name as another record label. And there have been a lot of record labels in the last 70 years, and there are more record labels, independent record labels being created every day now than there were 10 years ago. So you've got to come up with a name that you've got to make sure no one else is using. If they're using it, they're not using it in our industry. So just, you got to take into account that when you find a name, you then got to find a domain. You got to try to find the best Instagram handle, TikTok handle, YouTube channel handle, Discord, whatever you're using for your community, if you're building that with your label. So that's like a loaded one, and one that you've got to really sit down and think about. You got to form your business entity. We have a whole course on that in our course section. But whether you're setting up an LLC or an S Corp, which means, whether you're setting it up to raise capital externally or you're using it as a pass through, you got to figure that out. You've got to get your EIN. So once you set up your LLC or your business, you're going to get an employee identification number. This is like a social security number for your business. And this is what's used to set up your bank account, but it's also how you get paid. So when you go do a show at a venue, they're going to ask you for your EIN, and they will only pay you if you have an EIN. You got to set up your business bank account, because if you're going to make money, you got to find a way for your money to live somewhere. You got to obtain your necessary licenses and permits. So you got to get your state licenses, your operating licenses if you have a physical space, or if you're selling anything, depending on the state that you're in. You got to set up your distribution company account. That's your TuneCore, your United Masters. Some of them have label accounts and label relationships that cost a little bit more, but give you a few more tools. That also includes like your Spotify for Artist page, your YouTube for Artist page, your Apple for Artist page, your Music Match page. There's a bunch of resources that you'll have to set up there. You want to register your trademark, right? You want to make sure that you're protected so nobody else can go out there and say they're you, especially when you start popping. You got to create your contract templates and agreements. I've got a list on the next slide that I'll go through there. You got to create your copyright registration processes. So every time you release a song, you got to make sure you're registering your songs properly. That's an administrative function. It's a boring function, but it's one that you cannot miss because that's how you get paid. You've got to set up your accurate financial recording functions. We put this under legal considerations because, again, if you're running a record label, which means you're paying people for music, the number one way you'll get sued is by not paying somebody that you owe. So you've got to come up with systems that allow you to pay people on time, pay people accurately. Again, super boring things, but things that must be done nonetheless. And ultimately, you got to find a good attorney. Even with all the AI tools and bots and chat GBTs, you still need to get the advice of a attorney when you're dealing with contracts, when you're signing people, when you're signing deals with other people, because if not, what's in between those words is usually what gets you caught up, and that's what a lawyer is supposed to catch. So these are a few legal considerations that I would take into account. You guys got any questions? I'm gonna see if I can click this chat and see if I see anything. Of course I don't. Oh, I do see it. So if anybody has any questions, you can throw them in the chat for me. If not, I will keep rocking. All right, so I'm not going to run through all these, but here are just a few agreements that we have created for our work in the past. When this course goes live, we will have templates for these agreements. They are templates. That said, don't copy and paste it and just use it. Use it as a template or a guide to go to a lawyer and say, hey, with this template, I need to edit this, or can you look at this and based on my situation, does this work? I got my templates from somebody else, so I have no problem giving my templates to you. Von Mason, who was a great producer from the DMV Baltimore area, he did the song Roll, Skate, Bounce. That was in the skate movie with Bow Wow. Passed away recently, but was a great mentor, friend. And when I first met him, he literally handed me a stack of templates and said, don't use these exactly like I have them, but this is what I've used. Roll, bounce. Yep. And so again, that's the beauty of our community is he handed them off to me. So I'm gonna hand them off to you. So artist agreement, distribution agreement, master use agreement, and publishing agreement are pretty self-explanatory if you've taken any of our other webinars. But these four I put on the first page because you cannot have a record label without these four. If you are self-releasing independent artists, you don't necessarily have to have these agreements with yourself, but you will have to have something with anyone you collaborate with. That tool that I'm talking about, Charter, the producer agreement that they have right now covers this. So these four, which basically say what your terms are with the label, how you're getting paid and who's covering what, your distribution agreement, like where you're releasing it and how that revenue is being split, your master use license, which allows you to use the music, the master that's recorded to be released and for revenue to be collected, and a publishing agreement that allows the record label to use the song that's written by the songwriters. A lot of times this can be in one agreement. So you'll now find that, with record label contracts, the reason they're like 60 pages long is they're putting all of this and every term and every clause in one big ass contract. But these four have to be covered the second you're signing to somebody else or somebody else is signing to you. If you're self-recording, you don't need it for yourself, but if you collaborate with a producer or you have a songwriter or anybody else who's worked on the music, you got to have some kind of agreement that covers these four things. And if you sign to a major label, they won't release music with you without this signed by anybody who touched the record. They won't even release the song until you're 100% clear on all legal. And sometimes legal is the longest part of releasing a record when you're signed to a major label. All right, next up. So mechanical license, sync license, and work for hire agreement I have next. So these aren't necessarily mandatory for you as an individual artist. But again, if you sign to a major label, these are going to be covered in your agreement. if you are doing a deal with somebody like one to one and you're releasing music, this is usually what holds up sync. So if somebody is saying, hey, I want to make music for sync, and they've made a bunch of songs and they're like, all right, I got this music and I want to make it for sync, and they produced it with somebody else and they don't have an agreement that covers the terms for the three things that you see here, you cannot submit it to a sync catalog because you haven't clarified who gets paid when the record is used. So these three, the reason I group these is this is more tied for the folks who's saying, I want to get my music in sync. And the first question I usually ask is, do you write, record, produce your own music? And if they're like, yeah, I do it, but I have a best friend and they produce all the songs, even if it's a overarching agreement that covers all the songs you do together, you're going to have an agreement that gives somebody the right to go license the music on behalf of everyone tied to the records. I see a question in here. So as a self-released artist, if I get a feature, I need a master release agreement. So here's the thing. If you get a feature and you are releasing it on your TuneCore, that person is going to have to agree to allow you to to release that record. So they're either a work for hire, meaning you're paying them one time, or they're waiving their fee, but there's no money tied to it. They're not getting any of the master and they're only getting the publishing, in which they don't have to worry about a master release. Or if you're giving them a piece of the master and a piece of the publishing, they would need to release. They would have to sign a release that allows you to release it through your TuneCore. Because if not, what's stopping them from releasing it through their TuneCore as well, or their United Masters? So it just depends on how you've structured your deal, Jordan. If you're like, hey, man, we're going to work on this record and we're going to split everything 50-50. If you're splitting both the master and the publishing with who you're collaborating with, you will need an agreement that's saying you're giving me the right to use this song and collect and pay us out. And again, the terms in the charter, I don't know if somebody put the charter link in here, getcharter.com. That app, when you answer the questions and then your counter producer, whoever on the other side answers their questions, that's covered in the agreement that you receive. So yes, if you're collaborating with somebody and they're getting a piece of the master, they will have to give you a release that says you have the right to release it on your TuneCore. Or if they're releasing it on their TuneCore, you would have to give them a release that gives them the right to release it on their TuneCore if either of you is sharing the master. If you're not sharing the master, then you don't have to worry about that. And that, which is a great question, Jordan, is why most artists give up their masters to the label. It's not a nefarious thing. It's not, I went into it thinking like, oh man, these labels are screwed and but it's not. You got to understand that if you go back 60 years when people were using fax machines and people were signing contracts and recording music all around the world, and these companies with offices in New York were responsible for all of the administration and all of the legal. When they were signing artists, it was just easier for them to say, we don't want to chase anybody around. We don't want anyone chasing us around. We're just going to own the master so we don't have to deal with any of the legal. So the business was built to simplify the processes administratively for the people who are working in these big labels and putting up millions of dollars and trying to collect using the master. As technology has progressed, we don't need to be in those types of relationships anymore, because the ability to pay somebody and be transparent and send an email or send a contract via email or text somebody if you have a question has changed how we work. The problem is a lot of the labels up until a couple years ago was still operating with a 60, 70-year-old model with today's technology. And that doesn't make sense. So we're starting to see now, like, DistroKid has the ability to play out splits. So you could sign a indie record label deal with DistroKid, or set up a label account with DistroKid. You could set it up so that the splits are paid out directly through DistroKid. And so if someone signs an agreement and you say they get 20% of the record, you can put them in as a 20% recipient of all streaming revenue, which is master revenue. So again, United Masters, I think, has that now too. I don't think TuneCore has it yet, but I think they're rolling it out. But we're now starting to see that, like, the distributors are moving towards that. And we're also seeing labels are now more open to co-ownership of masters as opposed to exclusive ownership. Hopefully that answered your question, Jordan.
Quiz has a question in the Q&A.
Thank you. Quiz, for the tour/merch situation, Is the artist flying? What about touring in a van and taking the merch with you? Does it depend on the venue you can book? And transportation is planned after booking. Sorry for 3 questions in one. No, good question. So for this situation, the artist is doing LA show, and then they're doing 2 shows in Texas. Texas shows are like 2 days after LA, and they're a day apart. And so logistically, and they're not doing a band, they're only doing a DJ. So logistically, it's actually easier, quicker, and less headache for the artist to fly from LA to Texas and then drive between the 2 Texas cities and then fly to the next batch of shows. And so with that breakdown, it doesn't make like, because the artist and the DJ and the tour managers, 3 people will be flying from LA to Texas. There's no one to drive a van from LA to Texas. So we got to get the merch from LA to Texas. Then once it's at the first Texas venue and there's a rental van, they'll drive it from the first venue in Texas to the second venue in Texas, because Texas is massive. So when you're on tour, you could do 5 shows in the state of Texas, because you could do Houston, you could do Dallas, you could do Austin, you could do, there's like 2, 3 more. Lubbock, Texas, which is like in the middle of nowhere, but they always have popping shows. So again, when you're doing these, like if you're on the East Coast, right, we're spoiled by the East Coast. For us to get from DC to Philly to the DMV in total is 2-hour sprints. It's easy for us to go on tour and take a van. When you start talking about touring the middle of America or the West Coast, now you're talking about like 18-hour drive stretches. Sometimes it's just easier if you're not taking a band to just fly. And then even if you do the math, because you're not paying for gas, you're not paying for extra hotels, you're not paying for extra fuel, even if it costs us $800 to ship 3 boxes of merch, it's actually cheaper than it would be to rent and drive for 2 days to then get to the next city. And that's speaking from experience, because I've driven that drive a couple times and I don't plan on doing it again. And then the last 2 I have are performance agreement and non-disclosure agreement. So the performance agreement is basically a show agreement, and the NDA. A lot of times you'll use that if you're bringing somebody in and you don't want them to speak about what you're doing. I've seen this so when we've had label meetings and maybe an artist is doing a rollout campaign and they're doing a partnership with like Instagram or something, or they're doing a partnership with YouTube or Spotify directly, and there's money being like exchanged, or the label might be paying, and they don't want that information to get out there. We've had to sign NDAs before we even enter into like the marketing meetings. And then performance agreements, again, date of show, time of show, venue, how much you're getting paid if for the show, how much you get paid if you sell the show out, how much you get paid if you sell the show out and the bar makes X. And those are standard contract templates that you should have when you're starting your label. And again, they will be available in this course for you to download as templates. They are not legal documents for you to just go use. They're for you to take to a lawyer and make them work for your situation. All right. And then this is a resource page. This will also be in the course, the actual physical course, and these will be clickable links. And we have a running database of this somewhere. I think Prasal's put together for us as well for the community. But these are just some examples of like resources that we use in real time as a label. So distribution companies, we know what that is. Streaming companies. So, you have an account with TuneCore, DistroKid, that's to release your music. Then you also have an account with Spotify, Apple, Tidal, YouTube directly. That gives you more analytics. That gives you access to pitch to playlists and all of that. Music licensing platforms, if you're trying to get your music placed, you can upload it to these platforms and hopefully get additional money there. Promotional platforms, HypeEdit and Repost Exchange, and all of those tools that independent artists can now use to try to get more plays and streams and eyeballs. You got social media platforms, music promotion agencies, industry databases. So All Music and Music Gateway are databases where you can find credits for who produced, who mixed an album. This is important. If you like an artist's sound, let's say you listen to the new Lil Yachty album, for example. I know we got somebody in this audience who's probably listened to it and loved it. And you're like, man, that sonically is amazing. You can go to All Music, or you can go to genius.com and you can get the credits for the Lil Yachty album. And then so it's like, all right, who mixed that record? Who mastered it? Who produced it? And you can reach out to those people for your label or for yourself as an artist and get a quote. Hey, I love the Lil Yachty record. I have a record I'd love for you to mix. What's your rate? And these people are business people. They will more than likely respond, or an assistant will respond. Might be a crazy number, but most people don't even take the step to ask the question, which is crazy to me. Because if that's the sound you want, I'd rather you know that it costs $3,000 for a mix and you can work towards it one day than to not even know and never ask. Because what if they say, "Oh man, I love your song. I'll mix it for $300." You could get a Grammy winning mix for $300 just because a person loves your song and they have some time. Mastering and production and recording studios, you always want to have a list of those. Equipment rental companies, you always want to have a list of those, especially if you're performing. Lyric sync companies, we use Music Match. I'm sure there's a couple others, but when you're on Apple or Tidal and you see, or Spotify, and you see the lyrics on the screen, or even on Instagram when you add music and you can see the lyrics coming up, these companies are connected to those companies, and you can add your lyrics and match them and verify them and add credits. And that's how you get your lyrics on Spotify, Tidal, Instagram, and on and on. Music and industry trade publications. So they're not as relevant or not as impactful as they were 10 years ago, but your Billboards, your Rolling Stones, your Faders. Music and Entertainment Industry Associations, RIAA, which is based in DC. They're the ones that give out the plaques. A2IM, Recording Academy is another one. Sometimes joining these associations, being connected to them are great ways to network and connect with folks. Music rights management companies, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. You guys have heard me talk about that. You got to have that set up. Even if you're a record label, it's important that you have a publishing company in case you ever do a publishing deal or you get points on the publishing for songs. Music merchandising companies, there's Merch Bar, Topspin, Printful, and a few others. We're actually doing something with a group called Aura, AURA, for the 24/7 artist community. That's going to be really cool, I think, for musicians in general. Music industry job boards, Music Gateway, Music Jobs. I love Digilogs, social media. They do a great job of posting jobs in the industry. Copyright registration companies. So copyright.gov, you can do it yourself. And then there are companies who you can pay to do it for you. I think Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom now do those things. And then professional event planning companies are really important, not just for shows, but for holiday parties, or even just to put together events. I've seen artists, we've had a few artists who used to come to our studio when they had their big meetings and were trying to get signed. And they would bring people in to get the studio and the setting right, and catering and candles and all of that stuff, just to set the mood, because there's a high chance you're going to get signed if the environment and the mood is right. So just having somebody with that background or skill set in your corner is important. So again, these are some of the resources that are needed if you're running a record label. Again, even if you're running your own self-recorded situation, if you're not thinking about some of these things, you should start thinking about them, because they're going to be a part of your journey at some point. All right, checking in with you guys. How we all doing? We're good. I will keep going. All right, so building your team. So I love this section, because if you are an artist and you're putting music out on your own, whether it's on SoundCloud or DistroKid or whatever, you are technically all of these roles by yourself. And this is why we started 24/7 Artists, because to me, the idea of like an independent artist recording their music, mixing it, creating artwork, uploading it, sharing it, tagging it, pitching it to playlists, doing the photo shoot, coming up with the merch, testing the merch, selling the merch, setting up the Stripe, setting up the Square, setting up the PayPal. Today's the last day of January. You got to do your 1099s for the people that you paid last year. It's like, it's so much that we have to do. And if you don't even know how to be an artist yet, how do you know how to be all these other things? So I just wanted to list out the team members. If I had an unlimited budget and I was starting a record label, this is what my record label team looks like. If you're an independent artist, do you need all of these things day one? Absolutely not. And even if you had $1 million in the bank, do you need to hire all of these people? Absolutely not. Again, I'm excited for you guys to tap into tomorrow's webinar with Prasal, because the tools that I'm seeing and I'm being introduced to by people like Michael Prasal allow for an artist to automate a lot of the administrative and operational tasks that these people do, which allow you to focus on the music. And that's why I'm excited. And yeah, he just said it, lots of dope tools out there. every day it feels like Prasal's adding another tool to our chat or to our team chat and blowing my mind, because I'm just like, man, it's so, you can be so efficient as an individual, as an entrepreneur now with these tools. Someone just needs to teach you how to use them. And that's why we do this webinar series. And with the upcoming webinars, we have some really cool people coming to teach how to use these tools. Now that you guys will have an idea of like, all right, we know about publishing, we know business and music, we have an idea of how to like kind of set up and what we should be thinking about as an independent artist or a label. Now, what are the tools that allow me to do these things better? And there are a bunch of them. So you'll find a tool that works for you and you'll be able to execute. I'm not going to bore you guys and go through these, but I'm going to call out a couple because I think they're key. So obviously A&R is a person responsible for signing talent, but they're also the person responsible for seeing the project through. So they work with the artist on behalf of the label. So if you ever hear somebody say, man, can you A&R my project? They're really asking for like a project manager, right? That's what when I say A&R, if someone says, man, I'm going to A&R a project, I'm thinking of someone that's going to be the project manager. That's checking in. That's basically setting goals, deadlines, deliverables tied to a project. That could be something as simple as getting the stems from the producers. That could be something as simple as creating a log and a list of the producers, their names, their emails, their phone numbers, their social handles, the name they want to use in the credits, photos that they want us to use to promote, right? Those are all tasks that you have to come up with. An A&R in a situation is usually going to handle that. Business manager, that's the role that I play in most of the artists who I've worked with. It's really the person that's handling the finances. So the budgeting, accounting, tax planning. They're not usually handling the creative. They're not having creative conversations. They're usually not booking studio time. They're usually not making decisions as it relates to like what artwork to use or what merchandise we should roll out with. They're the person that's saying, hey, we got $800 in the account. We about to spend $600 on the studio time. We only have $200 left for marketing. Sabrina said we need $500. What are we going to do? Right? That's your business manager. So your publicist is responsible for promoting the label and the artist to the outside. Publicists are huge. I feel like a lot of people overlook the role of a publicist or say they need a publicist too early. The job of the publicist is to get you write-ups, to get you looks in the media, on blogs, on Instagram channels, on radio. They're the person that crafts your story, packages it, and pitches it to their network. An established publicist is already going to be tied into the bigger opportunities. So when you see an artist get the cover of Vanity Fair or Rolling Stone, a publicist set that play up, right? Like they already had the network, the relationship, they're already in that network. When you see somebody get a Good Morning Washington or Good Morning New York spotlight, usually a publicist is tied to that. Somebody's tied to that morning show segment for your local TV news, and they know a producer there, and they can get you a 15-minute slot or a 7-minute slot to talk about your show or talk about your song or talk about your impact. Right? Publicists are usually reached out to by these entities when there are specific needs. I'll give you an example. For February is Black History Month. So right now, all media outlets are trying to do Black history stories. So publicists are reached out to by these media networks and these newspapers and these TV shows and these blogs and magazines to find interest stories, as they call them, that tie in with Black history. And so if your publicist is connected, they're going to figure out how to take what you're currently doing, what the media outlet's looking for, and piece it together. And so that's the role of a publicist. If you don't have any music out, if you don't have your brand crafted, if you don't have a call to action, a thing for people to do once they find you, you don't need a publicist yet. You need a publicist when all of those things are in place, and then you basically are opening the floodgates for people to find you, go buy a ticket, go donate to something, go buy a piece of merch. And this is why you'll see artists do a lot of impact things, right? If you buy my merch, $2 goes to this homeless shelter, because that's the tie-in that the publicist is going to use to get you the look on the news, right? March is Women's History Month. So in March, they're going to be doing a lot of women-focused things. April is going to be its own month. May is going to be its own month. So every month is its thing. Every week it's its thing. Every day it's its thing. And a publicist connects the interest to the story. And sometimes it can be annoying because you may have a song that you love and a publicist might like twist the story to get you the look. I've seen artists do this a lot and hate it a lot. And so that's the one thing to be careful when you're dealing with a publicist, because they're under pressure. You're paying them to deliver, and they're going to deliver by any means necessary. Marketing and social media managers, I think those are pretty self-explanatory. And again, a lot of us are doing it ourselves. Digital distribution coordinator, that's pretty much you if you're uploading your music to Spotify. Sales and promotion coordinator. Again, so for the record labels, they have folks who are responsible for pitching to playlists. On the inside, they have people in Spotify, Apple, and Tidal who are also responsible for working with the people at the label to get you on these playlists. So when you sign to a major label and they do basically a brand overview and audit, and they say, okay, you're like this artist, you're like this singer, you're like this songwriter, they already have a crafted list of playlists that they know will work for you. And they have people at the distribution companies and directly at the streaming companies who they will set up a meeting with. They'll introduce you, you'll meet them, you'll talk, you'll laugh, you'll joke, you'll play them the records. They'll say they love it. And then you'll end up on 17 playlists for your first song. That's why people sign record contracts, because the labels have these people already in. The labels also outsource this work now. And there are also third-party digital marketing companies and sale and promotional companies that also have those relationships. And so even as an independent artist with a budget, you can hire somebody to set up those exact same meetings, set up those same calls, and get you on those playlists. It is not cheap. It is not cheap by any means. You're talking thousands of dollars to make that happen. And so the organic route is what most independent artists go through. But if you have a budget and you are looking to do that, there are companies out there that do this. And sometimes those companies will do it for a trade-off. They'll want a piece of the master. Sometimes they'll do it for a fee. Sometimes they'll do it for both. And a lot of times they have to like the music first. They only work with select artists. They're not open companies that you just have $3,000 and you get your song on 10 playlists. There usually is an approval process as well. Your graphic designer or your creative director, one and the same to me. Super important. And I think on one of the webinars I said, if I was starting a company, it's probably the first person I would hire, because getting your brand and your story out there is more valuable at this point than almost anything else you can do. So getting somebody who can create dope visuals, create posters, create artwork, create merch, is really good. And if you're an artist and you can do that, that is a massive value proposition for you as an artist. So if you're an artist and you learn that skill, that's kudos to you. If you're an artist and you have time and there's a skill you can learn, that's one that I would suggest you start looking into. Even if you just master using Canva or something like that, learn how to make your own assets sooner than later. Tour manager, pretty self-explanatory, but again, separate from a business manager or a day-to-day manager. Tour manager usually just handles the logistics surrounding shows and tour. Studio engineer, so recording engineer, mixing engineer, mastering engineer. If you're an artist or a label, you're going to have a Rolodex of those people and your go-to people for certain sounds. For super 808 trap records, you're going to want a certain look. For more light, acoustic songs, you're going to have an engineer who has their sound, or find somebody who can do it all. And then a legal advisor or counsel. I put that last, but it's definitely not least on this list. You got to have somebody who's looking over those contracts. That's a running thread here. Hopefully you guys are seeing that. When you find artists who have been screwed, it's because they didn't have the right legal counsel. So before you sign any agreement, before you sign any document, before you sign anything that gives rights away or gives ownership away, have somebody look at it who is a lawyer, not somebody in law school, not somebody who kind of knows law. You have to have someone who is in our business and knows the law to look at your agreements. All right, finding and retaining talented artists. So this now is more for if you're starting a record label, a music group, or even if you're an artist and you're just looking for people to collaborate with. Here's a list of places that I would find artists. You guys can screenshot this and you guys know most of this. One of the things I would say, if I was starting a record label right now, which I'm not, Davina, don't worry, but if I was starting a record label right now, I would go to SoFar. SoFar Sounds to me is like the number one place I would go to find talent for two reasons. One, if you're performing it so far, it means that you have the ability to perform, which is a revenue stream. Two, if you're performing at So Far Sounds, it means that you have follow through. It means that you've signed up, you've registered, and you've shown up. The number one issue I have with artists when we've worked with them is never the talent, right? And this industry isn't about talent. If you're on this webinar and you think you're going to make it because you're more talented than anyone else, I will tell you right now that won't be the case. Because if it was about talent, that 9-year-old genius who plays the piano with their eyes closed would be getting record contracts. If it was about talent, that opera singer who can sing every registry with their voice and blow you away sonically would be getting the major record deals. The intangibles around the artists that get signed usually tie into work ethic, right? It ties into that unknown, like that superstar thing, and then luck. But that work ethic, you cannot replace. If you want to make it in this industry, you have to have work ethic. And so when people just send me music in my DMs or my emails and say, oh man, I want to work, I'll usually give them a task to see their work ethic. And if they follow through with the task, I'll move forward. If they don't follow through with the task, they've let me know that it's going to be a waste of time to work with them. So even if you find an artist in any of the things that I'm talking about here, always try to find additional ways to make sure that those people are who they say they are and who you need them to be. If you find an engineer, make sure that they're going to show up on time and they're going to deliver the mixes on time. If you got a backup musician or a backup DJ for your tour, make sure they're going to show up on time and they're going to be there on time and play the right songs and have the equipment. They didn't forget their MPC at home, or they didn't forget their turntables at home. I've seen the worst, and it's repeat. So the reason I like So Far Sounds is if someone's consistent with So Far Sounds, it means they'll be consistent when we're working. All right. Hiring staff and setting up an organization. Again, you guys can screenshot this. This will be in the course as well. And this is also all in the Building a Team webinar that I've done, and in the Building a Team course that's on our learning platform. I'll call out a couple of these that are super important. It's all important, but I'll say, so checking references, right? It's weird, right? Like you're a CEO. So when you get a job and you have to turn in your resume and you have to have references, and you call your homeboy and you say, hey man, these people are going to call you, like tell them you work with me and that I'm good. You got to like really check people's references. And because of social media, most people are telling themselves. So the best way to check someone's references is see who they've worked with and get a gauge. And I want to see both the good, bad, and ugly. No one's perfect. So like, even with me, if you would ask 100 people I've worked with, you're going to find 10 people that's like, oh man, working with him was horrible. You're going to find 10 people that say, oh man, working with him was the best thing ever. And then you're going to find 80 people that's like, oh man, you do's cool. Like that's life. I want to hear from the great and the horrible whenever I'm working with someone to know what to expect, because no one's perfect anywhere. So do your homework. Yo, I saw you produce the record for this person. How was it working with them? Hey, I saw you engineered this person's session. How was it working with them? Just a cold DM. And people will be honest with you. Cultural fit, super important. So when building a team, cultural fit and compatibility is important. Cultural, not meaning like color or race or anything like that. Cultural meaning like it's the vibe check, right? If you guys are all about collaboration and community and sharing and like, being open with each other, and you add someone to the team who's the opposite of that, it can become a cancer, right? If you add someone to the team who's like, man, like I don't like that, I'll tell our story. We had a system at our old studio where if you worked on a record, you got even splits. That was how I worked. If I worked on a record with you and there were 4 of us in the room, I don't care if you added one word or 100 words, everybody got 25%. That way, it was never a question as to what percentage anyone was going to get from a song they worked with me on. That was how we worked for years. Then we added this producer to our team. And the first time they worked, and they knew what it was going into it, they complained that someone else only did a part of the hook, but they did most of the production and they should get more than that person. And from that day on, we had issues with percentages and how people felt in the studio. Up until that point, we had done hundreds of songs without an issue, without one single issue. The second we added this person to our mix and they brought that element, it changed our creative space forever. And it's not to say that they're right or wrong. They just culturally didn't make sense for what we were building. So once you know what your culture is, making sure that everyone's compatible, and doesn't mean everyone has to be the exact same, but everyone's cool with how things are. They understand that this is how things are and they're going to make it work, is important. Because if you don't add that when you're building a team, and this works for every company, by the way, it's not just music. This is football teams. This is politics. This is, you name it. The biggest companies in the world have to deal with this. Agencies, correct. If you're not fitting the vibe in a department or in a company, I don't care how talented you are, it's not going to work. So that's super important. And then I'll say flexibility and adaptability is super important. When you're starting up a company, not a lot of money, we're trying to figure it out together. We got to be super flexible and we got to be able to adapt on the fly. And you got to be honest with people when you're hiring them and bringing them on. Like, this is where we are. We're going to make it work. This is what we do. This is how we rock. And you got to check in with your team and make sure they're good. Even as I say this with my current team we're building a company and we have to be super flexible. My guys will tell you, and Davina will tell you, like, we've all had to make adjustments and sacrifices in building this and think about the time they take just to be on these webinars as I'm teaching when they could be doing a million other things. Right? We're all super flexible because we understand the bigger picture. That was communicated day one, but it's something that, like, it's not for everybody. So you got to make sure that people who are joining any creative business, but specifically a record label, you got to be flexible. You got to adapt. You might put out 6 records and they might be duds. The 7th record that you have no faith in might be the hit, and you might have to change your whole strategy and work overnight and take up the opportunity. Oh my God, we get a chance to open up, but we got to be in New York tomorrow and we're in DC right now. We got to buy a flight. Somebody got to put it on their credit card. Oh man, you need someone to pay for this, or use my miles. You can stay with my cousin. You can stay with my aunt who lives there. That's what this is. It's not this glamorous thing where it's like, oh, we just made it and we got $1 million up front and we're traveling first class and we're good. It is everyone eat, everybody's in, trying to make this work. And then you guys can screenshot this. This list is already in our in the course, and it's in a couple other courses. Key ones here, I'll say South by Southwest. Mickey can speak to that later on this call and on his call tomorrow. We're doing an activation at South by Southwest in Austin this year. NAMM show is really cool. That's in LA. A lot of the software and production companies are in NAMM. So if you ever want to meet somebody who works for Ableton or works for Apple and Logic or works for Reason or Avid and Pro Tools, you can go meet somebody there. They're super friendly. You can exchange information. And I've seen artists go to these shows and become resident artists or get featured on websites and not be major artists, but just make a friend at the show. So, a lot of times these shows are attended by more technical people. So when an artist goes, it's pretty cool to rub shoulders with and be around people on the technical side of the community. And then Nashville Entertainment Summit, I haven't been, but I've watched a few of their videos, and Nashville's it's a world within its own self. They have their own industry down there. And if you're an artist and you ever want to like plug into Nashville, going to these summits are a great way to like make introductions, because they're almost closed off to the rest of the world. Not that they're not inviting, but like they've got their own industry down there. So if you want to tap into the Nashville industry, you need an in. And going to these summits is sometimes a great way to make it happen. All right, I'm gonna check in. We almost done, and then we're gonna open up the Q&A. How's everybody doing? I know, Shango, this was a tough one. You can ask Davina. I was stressing over this because it's a bit, starting a record label. It's a lot. But the good thing is you guys are in the community. So as you are building, we are here to help you. So take what you can from this. Write down your questions. Rewatch this on demand once it's out, when Casey and them announce it in the community. And then as you're building your careers, the reason you're part of 24/7 Artists is you guys can hit me and the team, and we'll get you the resources. If I don't have the answer, if we don't have the answer, we will go find somebody with the answer for you. So thank you. Marketing and promotion. Jordan Rivers, do you recommend Sofar sounds for artists? 100%, 100,000%. To me, Sofar is a blessing. If you're an artist and you know how to sing or perform and put on a show, you are getting paid to perform in front of a guaranteed audience who aren't your fans. Like, I would pay to perform at Sofar Sounds. Huh?
They become your fans.
Yeah, they become your fans, right? Like, it's different if I'm doing a show and I bring my friends out and they know my music and they're just supporting me because it's me, right? That's normal. But imagine you're like showing up in a room of, call it 40 people in a vibe of its own, and you're performing your songs for the first time in front of them. And even if one person walks away saying, yo, that person's dope, That person's going to go play your music in their office or in their house the next day. That person's going to tag you when they share their story on IG from that night. And if you're good about it, you go to the show, you support the other artists, you stay around, and you meet every single person there. Thank you, Lay, for putting that in the link. You meet every single person there. You shake hands, you hand them a card, or you hand them something of value, a sticker. You sell merch while you're there. If anyone really rocks with you, they'll support you and sell merch. You have your sticker with your Cash App and all that available. Some people will Cash App you just because you move them, just because they know the story. They know that you're trying to get on, and they'll send you $10, $20 just off the strength. And you never know who's going to be at a SoFar. You never know who's going to find you at a SoFar. So, and SoFar is not paying me for this. I've done work with them in the past. And yeah, I've sent many artists to them. If you click that link and save it for later, you can go and apply to SoFar. If you're in our community and you're applying to SoFar, let me know once you've applied, and I can definitely send a word to our reps. I have contacts at the DC, New York, and LA SoFars. But yeah, someone asked if they're genre specific. They're not genre specific, but they definitely want performers, meaning like if you about to go up there and cuss and scream and yell out profanities for 10 minutes, probably not looking for that, because it's an intimate setting, right? It's usually either in somebody's house, or it's in somebody's backyard, or it's in like an office space that they've converted. It's not a lot of people. A lot of times it's 50 or less. But it's people who have prepaid to basically come out and be entertained. And so even if you're going to dance around and scream, like, just be good. They pay the artists. I know there were issues with that in the past, but they pay the artists. It's not a whole lot, but they also don't charge a lot. So when you do the math behind it, it's not like they're charging $100 a person and they're paying you $10. But I think like at one point they were paying artists like $30, but they would have like 5 artists on a bill. So it'd be $150 is what they were charging. By the time they paid the sound, the camera, the venue, and promotion, they were breaking even on most of their shows. Yeah. Mickey said it's, I think NPR Tiny Desk 5 with a crowd. That's exactly what it is. Good call. All right. So now I'm going to get into marketing and promotion. We've talked about some of this in the past, and I know that our homegirl Sabrina, who I think some of you guys are already working with, who's a marketing expert, spoke about this. So I'm not going to drill down too much. You can screenshot this. Again, this will be in the course. But your brand value and mission statement are super important. If you're starting a record label, or if you're an indie artist, one and the same, but let's say you're starting a record label, which means you're going to have multiple artists signed to you. You want to come up with a reason that separates you from other labels, right? So I'll give you an example. Cash Money produced Hot Boys. They produced Juvenile. They produced Lil Wayne. They produced Drake. They produced Nicki Minaj. They had a target audience. They had a target sound. The sound evolved, but even as it evolved, it still was pushing the culture forward, which is what they always did, and proudly representing what they stood for. Their brand stands apart. OVO, right now, Drake's label stands for something. Dreamville stands for something. So if you ever want to understand what I mean when I say brand value, if you're an artist, just go look at your favorite artists or artists that you really like. Go to their socials, go to their websites, go to their Wikipedias, and you'll see what I mean when you see like a common thread. And in your mission statement, in any business, you want to have a mission statement. For an artist, you want to have your own personal mission statement. But for a record label, you definitely want to have a mission statement. For 24/7 artists, our mission statement is to make artists' lives simpler at every step of their journey, right? So our goal is to make artists' lives simpler, or creators' lives simpler at every step of their journey. Keyword for us is simpler, right? It's not easy. I'm not going to promise anybody this shit's going to be easy, but if I keep giving y'all these gems, and then Mickey follows up with the tools, and then Davina follows up with the community in real life events and opportunities, and Casey's following up with the promoting you guys and putting you out there, the steps should be simple for you guys to reach success. But like losing weight, you're going to have to do the work. So I could say losing weight is simple, but it's not easy. Becoming an independent artist, creative entrepreneur is simple, but it's not easy. And I'm just here to help you simplify it. I'm going to run through a couple of these. So establishing a strong online presence. We're doing something with GoDaddy in a couple of months. Hopefully I'm not prematurely speaking, V, but we're doing something really cool as far as like websites for artists with GoDaddy. But there are many options out there. You can build a website on Canva. You can build a website on Wix, on Squarespace. And I'm sure there's AI tools that build websites now too. So like, but you want to have a website even in a social media era, because if you're selling music, if you're selling merch, you want a place for people to go to, and an email list. You want to build an email list because you want to be able to communicate directly to the folks who rock with you when you drop music, when you drop merch, when you have a tour coming up, or when you're looking to do something cool and you want to see people to support. It's more impactful when you can email 100 people. I know people with 10,000 plus Instagram followers, but they can't get 5 people to do something. And I know people with 1,000 Instagram followers who can get 1,000 people to do something. So, having an email list is a super powerful way still to get your message directly to your folks. Plus, you don't want to trust someone else, right? Like Instagram's constantly changing their way of doing business. Now it's not, it's not by chronological, it's not by time. Now it's by relevance, or it's by who they think you're going to like. TikTok's 100% by who they think you're going to like. So you might see something from 6 weeks ago, or you might see something from 6 minutes ago. And so you don't want to put your marketing in the hands of somebody else. Unique and valuable content. So I know Casey's going to work on some stuff. We drop tips all day on our social media for this. But you want to find ways to provide value with your content. Even if you're singing, even if you're performing, even if you're producing, find a way to create valuable content for your audience, and content that your audience will appreciate. And you got to play around with it. And then when something works, do more of that. And when that works, do more of that. I learned this from Vic Blends, my guy who I just think masters social media. And when I asked him, I was like, yo, what's the secret? And he was like, man, I put stuff out. And if it doesn't work, I'll tweak it. Maybe it was the wrong time. Maybe it's the wrong, content. If it does work, I'll try it again. If it works again, I'll double down. And then eventually I find myself doing things that I like and my community likes. And I never really thought of social media like that until he said it. And I've seen what he's been able to build with that, which goes to fostering community and engagement with fans and followers. So as a record label, the big labels miss out on this a lot. And I think this is why the small labels are killing them. You as a label have to foster community. Like, you've got to make sure that it means something for people to be connected to your label, whether that's on social media or in person. So, if someone comments on a post, go back and comment. If someone asks a question, go answer that question. It's super important that people are engaging. You're engaging back with your fans. It's not a one-way streak. That's both as an artist and as a label. When someone posts my songs on Instagram, even if I don't know them, I send them a DM every time and say thank you, because it means the world. You don't know me and you're sharing my music, or you know me and you're sharing my music, but you don't have to do that. Just a simple thank you can suffice. And if I got to send 300 thank yous out, that means that 300 people shared my music. If that's the burden I have to carry for putting out a record, thank God for that. And then continuously evaluate and adjust your branding strategy based on data and feedback. I know Sabrina speaks to this a lot in her gems that I see on TikTok. What works year 1 may not work year 3, probably won't work year 6. And then you may be revisiting what you did in year 1 and year 9 because it may work again. So always be aware of what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the world, what's going on with you, and make sure that you're adjusting your branding strategy in real time. And you don't have to adjust weekly, but just kind of do a check-in quarterly. All right, is this working? I know Casey and I have a running thread in our text message where if I see something that I like, and a lot of times it's not even from our industry on social media, I'll send it to them. I like how they presented this information. I like how these fonts look. I like how these captions look. It's just little things that I'll pick up, and then we'll start implementing on our content. So you don't have to look in your industry for that. You can look on TV, you can look on other social channels, you can look on magazines and banner ads, and you might see something you like and just screenshot it and be like, man, I like how they did that, and start applying that to your content. See, I got a content. Oh, someone just said this is great information. Thank you. And I know it's a lot of information. Bear with me, y'all. I'm going to get through this, and then we're going to open up this Q&A. We almost done, I promise. All right, so
good.
Utilizing social media, which, God, that's a loaded one. That's a course within itself. And online marketing is a whole nother course within itself. but I've broken it down to 5 sections that I think everybody should be thinking about today. If you're on this call, I don't care if you're a manager, I don't care if you're an artist, I don't care if you're running a record label, engineer, running an agency, or even an investor. These are the 5 things you should be thinking about. Defining your target audience and determining which social platforms they use. Number 1 for me. Who is your target audience and where are they? If you are a producer and you make sample type records, find the people who are doing it well, find where they're doing it well, and then start creating there. Is it YouTube channels that do it well? Is it Instagram channels that do it well? Is it TikTok channels that do it well? You can do it on all. You can repurpose for sure, but I would start with a focus on one platform. If you're a vocalist and you sing covers, where is that going to work for you? If you're an artist manager and you provide tips, where does that work for you? Find someone who's doing it right and then do it where they're doing it. Super simple, but I think a lot of times it can be overwhelming when we're thinking, oh God, I got to create content for 6 platforms. Don't think about creating content for 6 platforms. Create content for one platform and then figure out how to repurpose it on the other platforms. Create a consistent brand image and tone across all platforms. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see creators make and businesses make when we do audits for artists that we're taking on or helping out. Before we start talking about rollout or what song is a single or what platform we should use or what distribution company to work with or even what digital marketing company we're going to reach out to. If I go to your Instagram, your TikTok, your YouTube, your Spotify, your Apple, and your website, do I know it's the same person? Right? Super simple, but like most people miss out on this very simple thing. Do I know it's the same person across them? Or do you have a 7-year-old picture on your YouTube because you haven't updated that in years? You got a completely different name on your TikTok because you created that when you were in high school. Your Spotify is doesn't have any picture at all because you haven't claimed your profile page. Your website doesn't have any pictures of you, right? Like when you have this disconnected brand, when someone finds you, because it's not if, you're going to pay money and you're going to have someone spend marketing dollars and they're going to promote your stuff. When someone finds you and they go to press something, don't leave any room for them to be confused, right? Keep it super the same across the board. If you think about the biggest companies in the world, they do this better than anyone else. If you think about the most successful companies in any industry, they do this better than most, right? If you go to McDonald's, it's pretty much the same format in most McDonald's, right? And when you go to a McDonald's that's different, a lot of times it's annoying because you're like, man, I'm just trying to order my food. Where's the place? Chick-fil-A, right? They pretty much have a consistent drive-through flow. And when they change it in one market, eventually they're going to change it in all markets, because when you drive to a Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, they want you to feel the same. When you go to a Forever 21 or any kind of clothing store, the layout's almost always going to be the same. When you go to a Walmart, the layout's almost always going to be the same, right? People don't want to have to think when they're dealing with your brand or your business. They want to get past the thinking and just get to the good thing. So don't make it difficult for people. Just do a simple, consistent branding across. If you guys need help with that, something we can definitely help with. I think Sabrina definitely helps with that too. But that's a very simple solution. And a lot of times it's free. It's just one profile picture, one banner, one bio description, same set of tags, use the same colors, right? Like it's not, use the same thing across all platforms and you've already elevated your brand. Post regularly and consistently with engaging content such as teasers, behind the scene footage, and exclusive offers. I'll put my hand up. I'm horrible at posting regularly. I know Casey's probably laughing behind the scenes because I have more content than I could imagine to post, and I still am not posting regularly. I've got to get better at it. So I'm preaching to myself when I say this, but posting regularly works. When I was posting regularly on Instagram for like a good 3.5 months, Instagram hit me up directly and offered me the ability to start getting paid to post reels. And they offered me to be a part of the Instagram partner program. I think I posted maybe 90 days straight or something. So there was something that triggered them that allowed them to say, yo, this dude's doing something. And I'm sure it continues to grow. Also, the more you post regularly and consistently and you're using hashtags and your audience is engaging, the algorithm learns who you are. They figure out who you are and they show your stuff to more people. I've seen this happen on my TikTok. When I was posting regularly on my TikTok, I didn't get hardly any views for my first, call it 20 posts. Then about post 25, 26, it was like people started finding my old posts, and then my new posts started getting more plays. And then all of a sudden I woke up and it was like, yo, I had a couple posts with like 15, 20,000 plays, and I wasn't even posting like that anymore. So the more you post, the better it is. Yep. And then consistent branding. Davina just put social handles are the same across all platforms where possible. That's getting harder and harder. Davina is an expert in this. So when you guys are ready, hit Davina and she can help you come up with creative workarounds for your social handles. Again, I spoke about interacting with fans and followers. If you're not doing this, I think you're missing out on really building a connection that extends. The secret to selling out a concert or a show, the secret to getting more plays on a song, the secret to selling more merch is to have people tell other people for you, right? It's not your ability to post and get 1 million people to see your post. It's your ability to get 1,000 people to post your stuff for you. If you think about the music that you've come across, there's a higher chance that you're listening to a song because a friend or a family member or someone that you trust said, listen to this artist, than it is that artist ran an ad and you're like, oh, I've seen this Taylor Swift ad 50 times. Let me listen to it, right? Like I've seen 1 million Taylor Swift ads. I don't go and press play on Taylor Swift's records without someone saying, yo, you gotta listen to this Taylor Swift song, because she's not my kind of artist. I don't listen to that. And not that I don't listen to folk music or pop music or even country music, but I'm just not a Taylor Swift fan. But if Davina was to say, yo, you gotta listen to this Taylor Swift song, I think you're gonna like it, I would press play without a doubt. So that's an example of like interacting with your fans and followers, build a real connection, because your fans and followers are how you grow, right? Nobody wants to go to a concert by themselves. So if you can make a fan, let's say you do a So Far show, someone falls in love with your music, they follow you, they listen, they become a fan, they're on your email list, you send them an email, you DM them, you say, hey, I've got a show, I want you to come. They don't want to come by themselves. So there's a higher chance that they're going to bring 2 people with them. Well, if I'm bringing 2 people with me and they're going to a concert for an artist they've never seen, what are they going to do before they go to the concert? They're going to press play, because nobody wants to go to a concert to listen to songs they've never heard before. So the week of the concert, they're going to play your music out to find the songs that they like, that they hope that you perform. This is how this business works. So again, yes, spend money, digital marketing, and get random people to see posts and ads works. But what works more impactfully is if you can find a way to have other people tell people about you. All right. And then utilize paid ads to reach a wider audience and drive engagement. So paid ads and reaching a wider audience, to me, is a step after you've built your core audience. Once you've built your core audience and you kind of have an understanding of who your core audience is, now you want to start building that audience out and widening that network. You want to say, oh, okay, my audience is fans of these 12 artists or these 6 artists. These cities seem to be hot cities for me. These playlists seem to be playlists that my music ends up on regularly. And these are other artists that constantly end up on these playlists. So I need to find a way to tap into their fan bases, because there's a higher chance that they've heard of me, they've seen me, and they just need to press play, right? That's the strategy you want to use for paid ads. You don't want to start with no fans, no nothing, and just start running ads trying to target fans of Drake. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of energy, and it probably isn't going to work, because again, how many people press play when they see an ad for a song? Not too many. But what you want to do is you want to get in front of people. And if you know the people that you're trying to get in front of, it's going to help you with a higher click rate, or just a higher rate of someone being like, oh, I keep hearing about this person. Because that's really what the ads do. It's less that they see the ad and they press play. It's more, oh man, I keep hearing about this person. Like, you keep hearing about Ice Spice. You keep hearing about Ice Spice, and then you hear the song, and then whether you like the song or not, you've heard about her. And then you hear the song 5 more times, and before you know it, you're singing the song lyrics along with it. But you got to keep hearing about the person before you even think about pressing play. All right, y'all, we almost done. So we're going to go to building relationships with media outlets. So one of the things on this list that I'll go straight to this bottom section here. Most media outlets are genre specific. They work within niches. So a great exercise that I tell artists to go through, and that we've gone through, is I'll go to lists. Like, lists are always there for you. So whether you go to a Billboard list, or you go to a Apple Music playlist, or a Spotify playlist, right now there's, end of year or artists to watch for list. And I'll start seeing who's writing about those artists. I'll see what channels and social media pages are posting about those artists. And I'll start creating a list of any artist that I think is like me on those lists. And I'll say, oh, okay, this journalist wrote about this artist. These Instagram pages posted this artist. These YouTube channels shared this artist's music because I know they appreciate that sound. Because then that's the hit list for me to build relationships with. And then it's just a matter of connecting dots. So once I create that list, now I'm seeing, am I connected to anybody that's connected to this group? Well, first, am I connected to anyone directly? In the case I'm not, am I connected to anyone that they're connected to? In social media, one of the things I love is that I can see who you follow and I can see who follows you. So if I go to your follower list and I see that you follow 4 people that I'm connected to, I'm going to reach out to those people and say, hey, do you have a contact at that outlet? And then an introduction from someone that they follow or to someone they respect is always going to take me 10 steps further than me doing a cold outreach. And in the case that I'm not directly connected and I'm not connected to anybody that's connected, I'm then stalking you to figure out where you're going to be so I can make sure that I'm in the same room as you and I can just introduce myself. When I introduce myself, I'm not pitching anything. I'm not telling you to listen to my music. I'm not getting any links. I'm just introducing myself. I'm letting you know that I loved your article. I'm referring to articles that you've actually read, that I've actually read. If it's your Instagram page, I'm referring to things that you do specifically on your page. That means that I've paid attention. Because again, people love when people pay attention to these little things. And that for me is a great way to start the relationship. So if I can start there, there's a higher chance that now when we exchange information, when I have something, I'm going to invite you to it. Hey, I've got a listening session. I want you to come out. I'll give an example of something we did for Manny Wells when we were releasing an EP, maybe like 3 EPs ago. This had to be around 2017, 18. We did an event, a release party at Union Stage in DC. Union Stage is like a 450 person venue in DC. We busted our ass to sell that venue out. We weren't sure if we were going to sell it out or not. And we basically pulled every string and invited everybody in our network to come out. We reached out to 3 writers who we knew supported artists that we thought were similar to Manny. And we said, hey, got this artist in DC. We think he's the next. And we listed those artists' names. But rather than us say it, we'd want to show it to you. We're inviting you to DC. We'll fly you out. We'll put you up in a hotel for the night. Car service to the show. We'll get your VIP table. If you guys want to come early and meet Manny, you can. We'll take you to dinner before, lunch before, and then we'll fly you back out. And if you like the music and you like what we're doing, we'd love to discuss you guys writing an article about us. If you don't and it's not for you, worst case, you got a free trip to DC out of it. All 3 journalists showed up. All 3 journalists accepted. Because who isn't going to take a free trip to a city they don't live in a nice hotel, with car service and VIP treatment, right? That's now, not everybody's going to have the budget to do that for 3 people, but you could probably do it for 1. And as you're putting your budget together, right, that budget thing we talked about earlier, that's some of the expenses that you've got to start looking into. Do you mind talking about how you funded that? Out of pocket, Lay. Out of pocket. We saved up and we did it out of pocket. We had a budget when at that time we were operating business. So we were taking profits from one place and putting it in other places. But even right now, if I was an artist and I was doing this, I would crowdfund, right? Lay, when I look at you, when I look at your talent and I look at your infectious spirit and your ability to like connect with other artists, I would work with 4 or 5 artists in my community. I would put together a collaborative project. I would pool our resources and I would execute that way, right? Because like you're going to shine no matter what because you're so talented. And so if you don't have the funding yourself, a workaround that I would do if I was an artist and I didn't have the budget is I would partner with like 4 or 5 other artists. I'd say, let's put together a collaborative project. Let's pool our money. Let's take our time so we have enough money to do it right. And we can do that thing that you talked about. Because think about it. Even if you find a journalist that's in New York and you bring them down to DC for a day and you do a show at Pie Shop, what's it going to cost you to get someone an Amtrak ticket, a hotel for the night, and Uber Black? Let's say it costs you $800 in total. If you're splitting that with 4 or 5 other people, now it's only costing you like $125 or $200. And for $200, if you get a write-up in whatever group, that's what I'm talking about. So we had the money ourselves, but I'm not like, if I didn't have the money myself and I wanted to do something dope, I'm just collaborating with like 4 or 5 other artists. So that for me is an example of like building relationships with media outlets. And then once you have the relationship, stay in touch. I still stay in touch with those journalists today. Once every 3-4 months, once a year sometimes, I'll just check in, send them a text. If they write something and I love it, I follow them on social media. So if they post something, I'll share it. If they write something, I'll go read it. I'll comment on it. I'll comment on their post. I make sure that they know that I'm always connected and supporting them, so that the next time I'm reaching out to them, it's not like, all right, we did something 4 years ago and I'm back now, let's do something again. Stay connected. It can't just be transactional. If you're writing about us, it's because you rock with me. And if you rock with me, and if I wanted you to write about us, it's because I already rocked with what you're doing. So let's keep that energy throughout the years. Cool. And then leveraging live events and touring, we've spoken about this throughout, but ultimately, if you're running a record label or if you're an independent artist, we talked about So Far. So like So Far is a gateway to me for you being able to do your own shows. Money, if you want to make money as an artist, as a musician, touring is where the money is. So learning how to perform is super important. Learning how to put together shows is super important. And learning how to make this a part of your rollout, doing 2 to 3 shows a year around projects is super important at the minimum. And then once you kind of get the hang of that, then as you grow, now you're being able to put together a small mini tour. Then you can put together a larger tour. Then you can open for other people, because it's hard to find really good performing artists. So that's another skill set. If I was an artist and I wanted to create a differentiator, value proposition, get really good at performing, and study the greats, right? Study James Brown, study Michael Jackson, study Usher, study people who put together great shows, study Bruno Mars, study Beyonce, study the greats, and look at little things that they do that make their show special, and figure out how to do it at the level that you're at. It might just be everybody wears the same color on stage, right? Even if it's just you and a DJ, if y'all wear all white, wear all white. It could be little things that you do that make it unique. And then with touring, merchandise goes hand in hand. If you're an artist and you're putting out music, especially today with tools like Printful and Shopify, it costs you $0 to pre-sell merch, right? That's crazy. $0. I could put a logo or my album cover on the front of a shirt, and I could sell it for $50. And if 10 people buy it, I could then go and print up 10 shirts and ship it directly, right? It cost me $0 to do that. So there's no excuses in 2023 to not sell merchandise. All right, last section, distribution and sales. So understand your different distribution options. So we've talked about releasing music in some of our other courses and webinars, but obviously you got to find a good aggregator. There are pros and cons to all of them, but they will all work with you. And when I say work with you, you can ask questions. So you can sign up for an account on DistroKid, on TuneCore, on United Masters, and you can click contact us and you can ask them questions and they will answer it, because they make money from you. So because they're a business, even though they may not promote your music or playlist pitch you early, if you have questions, you can log in and you can say, hey, why should I sign with you? Why should I sign with you instead of your competitor? They need your business. They're going to give you what makes them different, what makes them unique, and then build a relationship with them. I have relationships with all of the major aggregators just from us doing it over the years. And there are regular people behind the scenes. The people that are working these companies are regular human beings like you and I, who are trying to figure it out just like we are. And they're fans of music, right? So beyond them having jobs, they understand the grind, they understand the hustle, and they support what they like. So reach out to them and connect and stay connected. And you're not stuck with one. That's the beauty of it. I'll release some on United Masters. I'll release some on TuneCore. I'll release some on DistroKid. I do it just to see what they're doing, but I also do it because I have relationships with all of them. So evaluate the pros and cons for you. For some of them, whether it's, do you want to pay annually? Do you want to keep 100% of the money? Are you looking for advances? Are you looking for a more intimate relationship with like whoever's doing the playlisting? Create your pros and cons list as you're doing your research. If you ever sign a deal with like a STEM or any of the private groups like the Orchard, you can negotiate your terms. It's harder in the beginning, but make sure that you're clear on the terms and that you understand when you can renegotiate terms, meaning like if you're ever doing a royalty split or anything like that. A lot of these companies are now getting into cash advances. So if you do a cash advance, make sure you understand what that means and how you're paying back that advance. And then continuously monitor and analyze your distribution channels to maximize your value, meaning the back-end analytics that you receive on your aggregator. Those analytics should be what let you know when you can tour. They should let you know what markets you should start looking for features and collaborations. If you're looking to do so-far shows, they're the analytics that I would use when I'm pitching to do a so-far in another city. So if I put out songs and I'm like, man, I'm killing it in Memphis, then I would reach out to whoever's in charge of so far Memphis and say, hey, Memphis is my third largest market. I'd love to do a so far there. Let me know what dates you have coming up and I can come down to Memphis. And then when I'm in Memphis, I'm also reaching out to record studios, producers, and other industry folks. And I'm making the most of my trip wearing my label hat because you want to build relationships everywhere that you go. Again, so here are some distribution options. So I always use DistroKid, TuneCore, United Masters. CD Baby's the OG. They've been around forever. Ditto Music is one of the newer ones. AWOL is one of those private ones that has a little bit more hand holding, but I think you have to be selected. Same with STEM and The Orchard. So, there's a bunch of these, and then Venice Music, I think that they do distribution as well. So there's a bunch of these distribution companies. There's more every year, it feels like. Research all of them and reach out to all of them. They all want your business. You are a customer to them. So when you are looking to sign up, or Muse as well, yep, reach out and ask them the question, hey, why should I sign with you over the other 30 aggregators? We're going to open this thing up to the Q&A. If anybody wants to come up, please feel free. You can ask your questions in the chat. You can ask your questions in the Q&A. It is 8:47. This is by far the longest webinar I've done. So I appreciate all of you for hanging in there with me as I talked a whole lot. Davina's laughing. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, if y'all want to pull up any slides, let me know. I can go back to any slides. I can answer any questions. Jordan, thank you for tuning in. I'm glad this was helpful, man. Tomorrow's webinar is key. So again, this is like overview. This is, all right, you're starting a label. There's 1,000,001 moving parts and they're always moving. To simplify the process, the tools that you use for your mailing list, for your database management, for your catalog management, for your financial record keeping, for your project management, for your communication with your team, learning how to use these tools are going to be paramount for your ability to grow and scale your business. Especially in this digital world where now, like, we're working from home a lot of times. If you're an independent artist, you don't have a big label, you don't have an office, you're hiring people, you're engaging people, you're trying to remember what conversations you've had. There's something special about this time for a business owner, even more than when I started, whatever it was, 12, 14 years ago for the first time as a business owner, because the tools are so much easier to use and you have options. So how do you not learn how to use these tools? And when you have people who are going to teach you how to use these tools and how they use these tools for free, just tap in. So I highly suggest you guys tap in tomorrow. The tool that Prasal is teaching us, Notion, I would say is the engine. It's the nucleus of our company. I think we use Notion as the core of our company right now for everything that we're doing. Every asset that we put out, every webinar, every in real life event, every activation, every opportunity, our tech products, everything that we're doing lives in our Notion. So that shows you how powerful this tool is. Thank you, Davina, for putting that link in the chat. Q&A, where can I find this recording for this webinar? Davina, do you mind putting a invite link for the community in the chat? We have our community. If you're not familiar with our Geneva community, we have a full community, kind of like a Discord, but we use this platform called Geneva. We have 24/7 TV as one of our channels in there. All of our webinars will be listed in our 24/7 TV. And then our courses are also available and linked in there as well. So outside of this being a webinar, it will also be a full course that someone can go in and take. And the beauty of those courses is they're clickable, they're interactive. So the resources, you'll be able to click and go to the distribution companies or download the templates or all of the stuff that I've talked about. So if you're not familiar with our courses and you're in our community, I believe we have a courses channel. But if you have any questions, just tap us in the community and we can plug you in there. But yeah, that Geneva link is an invite. So if you're not in the community, please click it, join the community. And it's free. It's going to be in the community once our team gets this downloaded and re-uploaded. Thank you, Mo. I appreciate this, man. Honestly, this feels good because this is what I did for years. If you guys worked with me before in our studio, this was what I did in the studio for many of the artists that came out of the DMV who ended up getting signed. I sat with them and their teams and we would talk about plays, and I learned through them. I learned with every deal. I learned with every show. I learned with every merch drop. I learned with every project rollout. And I learned from other people. So, when you have information, the first thing you want to do is make sure like it's right and you try it for yourself. And then the next thing you do is you try it on other people. And then when you see it works on yourself and other people, you're like, oh, I got something. I want to share this with the world. And the funny thing is these webinars right now are free, right? One day these won't be free. One day, there'll be a paywall and all of that. So for you who are coming now and taking 2 hours out of your day and learning and asking questions, I respect you guys because like it takes a lot to, to trust somebody, but also to find the time to do this. You got jobs, you got lives. So it's a serious step. Do you offer one-on-one consultations? I do not right now. I just don't have the time. I wish I did. I put all my time and energy into like building this community. However, if you're in the community and you have questions, ask in the community and we will get you the answer, because whatever questions you have, even if you feel like they're particular individual to you, I'm pretty sure they're going to help somebody else. And then if you ever are in dire needs and you need to like actually connect, just let us know. And if I'm not available, someone in the community will connect with you to help you answer. Again, I wish I could do the one-on-ones. The challenge for me is value, right? Like, what do I charge for a one-on-one? How do I make that expandable? And that's where 24/7 Artists literally came from, was I was spending hours on the phone with people, walking them through like these plays. And I was answering the same questions over and over and over again. And then Davina was like, why do you keep asking the same questions over and over again? Why don't we just like create a system where people can just learn from other people? And that's what this is. So I don't do one-on-one consultations, but you have this. So like literally you can ask me a question right now. You have me. If you have a question, ask it right now. And it's the second closest thing to a direct one-on-one consultation is you can put something in the Q&A right now while you've got me, and I will answer it in real time. And then the second best thing is in the community. If you have a question, you can literally go to the general chat and put it in there. And if I don't answer it, you're going to get 10 other answers. And then you can also DM me in the community and I'll get to it. Shoot Davina a DM too if I don't ever answer, and she will kick me and I'll answer. She always answers. And she listens to all the music and she buys most of y'all's merch. Any other questions? Thank you for that one though. And I appreciate that. Tons of great information here. Big shout out to 247. Thank you, Ahmed. Super dope. I'm glad we got through this. Yep, Mickey said DM's always open, right? So hit Mickey, hit me, hit Davina, hit Casey, and that team's growing, right? Sabrina's in the community. She's open. Hit her with the DMs, and you can set up consultations for her with marketing. I got some lawyers and other folks in the industry joining that'll also be available. And then Mickey and the community team are putting together some in-community lunch hours and open calls and community calls where more of this will happen, where it's less me presenting, but just like open forums for us to connect and ask questions and elevate the community, right? If there are things that you guys want us to be teaching and we're not, let us know. If there are people you guys want us to reach out to and connect with, or types of people, if you want booking agents or promoters or digital marketing folks to teach, or merchandise folks, just put it in the community. If I've had a one-on-one with you, you've heard me say it, and I mean it. We only get better by you guys pushing us. So if you guys feel like there's more we need to be doing, publicly put us on blast, and we will work hard to deliver. That's it for me, y'all. It's 8:55. If anybody has anything, okay, I got one. Do you have any recommendations when looking for photographers or videographers? I do. Start with the artists. So I'll assume you're shooting either a music video or some kind of behind the scenes content. This is the process that I've taken and that I would take if I were in your shoes. Create a list of the artists in my area who are doing it. When I say doing it, Their visuals are on point. Their music videos are on point. Their graphics, whatever, are on point. I'd create a list of who's creating the graphics for those folks, and I would follow them on social media. So that means you're going to end up following, call it 15 to 20 visual creatives in your area. I would then reach out to all 15 of them and see who's willing to connect to talk about working. You want to reach out to 15 and maybe 3 are going to respond. Of the 3 that respond, I would meet with the 3 of them and I'd see if they A, pass the vibe check, and B, if their budgets align. Because again, you may be surprised that you reach out to somebody who's super dope and they'd be willing to work with you for nothing because they think your music's super dope and they just may want a little bit more creative control. And then I would work with them. So that's kind of my process. My first partner at House was a guy named Simon Kim Shimwan. Any of the music videos that we shot for Fat Trail or Logic or the behind the scenes stuff we shot with Shy Glizzy and Wale and Meek Mill, like Simon was behind all of our, not just videos, but our photos, our logos, you name it. Simon was our visual guy. I met Simon because I saw this video reel on Vimeo. I didn't even know Simon was in the DMV, but I used it when I would meet with other videographers as this is the style and look that I want. I met with someone and I was like, this is the style and look that I want. And the person was like, oh, I know that person. I can introduce you. They set up a meeting with me and Simon. The name of the brand on Vimeo was Kim Shimwan. So I thought it was a female named Kim. So I'm expecting a woman, an Asian woman, to walk into my studio to meet about creative. And this big 6-foot Korean guy walks in with tattoos and is just super cool. We shook hands and became business partners that day because he was looking for somebody to help him with the business and to be on the music front. I was looking for someone to help me with the creative and be on the visual front. And it was a match made in heaven. Simon's one of the best business partners I've ever had. Simon, before that, had worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. Simon had won an Emmy. Simon could have charged 6 figures for a video and it would have been more than worth it. Simon and I worked by shaking hands as partners, and he shot content for us starting that day. So I just use that as an example of like, it's not always about finding someone who's going to pay you or you're going to pay. Sometimes it really is just about finding the right visual person who vibes with your music and you vibe with their aesthetic, and you guys are helping each other. Because again, the rule I had with Simon was he had creative control, and that was a dream for him to step into a place that would say, come be your best creative self and create what you think should be created. Simon was way ahead of the curve. Simon was shooting vertical videos before that was a thing, before TikTok, before IG Reels. He was like, YouTube, phones are vertical. Why are we shooting things this way? We need to be shooting this way. And I argued with Simon. I was like, what are you talking about, man? Like, who's going to hold their phone this way to look at a video? Simon was shooting behind the scene daily content, which was called House Dailies back then, in 2012, 13. Like, we were shooting behind the scenes daily studio content, and we had a YouTube channel with subscribers before that was a thing. So like, that's an example of like, when you give a creative control and you that's the trade-off, Lay, is like, you may find someone dope, but they may shoot the video that they want for your video, for your music. And if that doesn't cost you anything, but you get dope videos, that might be the trade-off. So again, start with a list, reach out to that list, vibe check, connect, break bread. And I see just in the chat, you've already got 2 people that you're going to connect with. So also just put yourself out there. It's crazy what happens when you just put looking for a videographer on social media, tag them. The other day, I think I put, looking for guitar player I put it in the community and I put it on my Instagram. I think I got something like 60 something guitarists that followed me and hit me up. So you just got to, put yourself out there too. All right, y'all, I'm not going to take too much more of y'all time. It's 9:00. It's been 2 hours. I don't like taking people's time. My thing with these webinars, my only ask for you guys is when it comes out, share it, share the community. If you feel like this is valuable and this will add value to anyone else's life, register for invite people. Yep, you guys can invite people to the community. Register for tomorrow's. I'll be up there. I'll be learning every time Prasal's talking about these tools. I learned something new. And then go and apply this work, right? The reason we don't do webinars every single day and we only do it 1 or 2 days a week is the rest of the week I want you guys applying this knowledge. So take something from today and go apply it. Take something from today and go apply it. And then you always can come back to the community and ask questions. Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to build your career in a day, but take at least one thing from today and apply it to your career. And we're here to support you. 247 team, is there anything you guys want to do before we wrap? Anything you guys want to share? Davina, your thing is low, so you might have to yell through me.
No. This was really, really dope.
Cool. Davina said this was dope.
Agreed, it was dope. Let's start some labels. And yeah, everybody tune in tomorrow too, so we can dive into all the productivity and tool stuff. Because creators are entrepreneurs, and once you have the tools that you can use to really kind of like supercharge yourself as a business, it makes life a lot simpler.
So we got Mickey tomorrow. Pull up. If you're not in the community already, hopefully click the link and you join. If you are in the community, ask your questions in there if you haven't asked already. We got a lot of really cool stuff coming out. I see Terry's in the audience. We've got our first tech product being released hopefully in the next, call it 65 days ish, and we'll be putting together a committee or a small group of artists to test it and then work with our tech team. So look out in the community for that invite. And then Mickey and Davina will be sharing some information about some of the community activities coming up and some of the committees we're putting together. Because again, the community is built by us, but like by us. Everyone on this chat is responsible for helping us build. So we're going to be calling on you guys to help us build this thing up and make it what it needs to be, especially with the in-person events. Looking forward to meeting you guys in New York and DC and Atlanta and LA, Minnesota, Chicago, and all the other places that you guys are from. So thank you guys again. Bless up to you guys. And I'll see y'all tomorrow in Mickey's webinar. Peace.